the hard thing that is at the center of Canticle, if I could describe it most simply, is that there needs to be some relationship between locations, of which I have a bunch, and relics, of which I have a bunch. Okay, so why is that? What's going on here? So in the game, you walk around between these different locations, some which might have like a special rule on them. They might introduce new golem cards, but they also have a unique set of relics on them. And then as you go around, you're like, I'm searching the catacombs. I'm going to go search for some relics here. You're going to find these things. There's like, right now, I think there's like 120, 130 of them in the game. And these relics are things that you equip in your kit, and you get to do cool stuff with them. You get to earn prophecy, which is like the victory point mechanism in the game. You get to do cool things, unlock these puzzles. All of the cool stuff you get to do is on these relics, which you find by searching these locations. And a thing that is central to the identity of this game is that when you go to a specific location, there are specific relics there. So like when you go to the catacombs, which is like a late game, exciting location that has some really cool and interesting stuff about it, you find things that you wouldn't find anywhere else, right? And so we need to have some way to associate some specific relics with the catacombs. And then we're going to have some other specific relics that go with the cathedral or the prison or all of these different cool locations. And I want there to be a lot of locations and a lot of relics because that's the variety of the game. That's what gives it this depth, this feeling of I went deep into this branch and explored and I found some crazy prophecy that I wouldn't have found anywhere else, right? That is a central part of what I want the game to do. The problem is, it is tedious and difficult to associate 130 relics with these 50 or so different locations. So like the first thing that I did, my very first solution to just solve this mechanically was I actually numbered every single relic in the deck. And so when you go to play the cathedral, for example, it used to say, go to the relic deck and find, items 87 through 91 and place them face down here. And when somebody comes here and starts searching, that's what they search through. It's like these 4 relics you put out there, right? This had a few problems. For one, I think even just putting them all out there immediately, it takes away all the mystery. It's like, hey, there's exactly 4 relics here, which is not that exciting. But even more importantly, it was a very tedious and kind of like numbery, mathy thing that was like turned players off. And it also meant that in order to play the game, you have to have your relic deck be in perfect order at the beginning of the game, which means every time you're cleaning up, it's like, hey, by the way, also, as you clean up this game, go put all of these relics back in order, which is a huge pain in the butt. And so it was a big hassle. And a couple of people, even players who played it, suggested, like, what if you just make a few different decks? Like you have like a religion deck and an engineering deck and a military deck. And it's just like, if you search a military building, you can get a military card. You search a religious building, you can get a religious card. And the problem is that this really did take away that central idea that I loved so much that I just described, which is like you go to the cathedral and you get something that could only ever have existed in the cathedral, which gives me as a designer much tighter control of the experiences that people are having. I like this. It's central. I have to solve this problem, and I'm not just going to solve it by kind of like throwing things into these generic decks. Okay, so how can I solve it? I think that one of the ways of approaching this is to minimize how annoying it is. And so one of the first things that I did to change this was, instead of having each of these have a unique number on them, I actually put on the backs of them, on the back of each relic, the location that it comes from. So this one just says like 3 church, and church is, every location has a number at the top of it so that you know which it goes with. And then I also said that you don't immediately place them out there when you place the location. So instead I just like play the church, and it says on there, hey, there are some relics here. And then the player was able to come over there and say like, hey, I'm searching the church. And as the emperor, I can go thumb through here, find the churches, be like, okay, here you go. Here's a church card for you. Maybe there's more, maybe there aren't. Maybe there's 9 relics there. Maybe there's only 1. But you don't know. You need to like go there and search and find out. This felt way more like exploration. So from a player experience, it was much better. And it also meant that it cut the amount of sorting these cards majorly down because I'm like, I don't care what order the church cards are in, just put them in, just group them by like, these are the cards that are in the church. These are the cards that are in the cathedral, et cetera, et cetera. So this majorly cut down on sorting, and it did make the player experience feel a lot more like searching. It was less rote, but there were still problems because sorting was still a pain. Like if you have like 60 locations, you still need to just group all of your remaining relics by 60 locations, which is a lot. And I was also noticing that a lot of the locations felt pretty thin. Again, I had this assumption that every location should have at least like a relic or two on it. And so I spread them very, very thin. But what that meant, of course, is that if you go to the cathedral and there's only two relics there, now you just kind of like know what's in the cathedral and there's very little mystery there. And if you play the game a second time, you already have this kind of rote understanding of like what is in the cathedral and what order you're going to find things in, which is really not that exciting. So I kept on brainstorming, I kept on working through things, and I eventually landed on this thing that I realized that what I really care about is like relic density. And there's two reasons. There's the sorting reason, but there's also the player experience. So from a player experience, the reason that this matters is because like if the cathedral, instead of having two items, has like six relics, I said items, I say those interchangeably sometimes. If the cathedral has six relics in it instead, you might not have time in the game to search the whole thing. And so now randomness is introduced. You're just going to get one of the random cathedral cards. You don't know which one you're going to get. Maybe you don't see all of them in a given game. There's reasons to go back and explore more. The other reason that this matters so much is because the sorting problem gets easier the fewer unique locations are represented on the backs of these cards. It becomes much easier to deal with this deck and to manage this deck if there's a smaller number of locations that contain relics. And so that drove me towards a design that was like, oh, each of these locations takes up like space and cognitive load and needs to have a really strong justification for existing. And if the location contains relics, there's some cost associated with that too. There's the cognitive load, there's the sorting burden, there's the thinness problem. And so actually what I'm optimizing for is to have as few locations as possible. What this means is that there's a denser kind of collection of relics on the places that actually have them. And there's reasons to like stick around there. There's randomness, there's incompleteness. So you have to come back and play it again another time. But also it avoids that sort of thinness and rote feeling. But then finally, it makes it so that sorting this deck and managing this deck is much easier. So by doing this, I actually cut almost 20 locations from the game, and I'm down to like 40 now. And almost half of those don't even contain relics anymore. And so what that means is that this sorting and managing of this deck is much, much more manageable now. And each location feels like richer and more important. And so previously I was like, I have all these ideas. Let's explode them into 100 unique locations and spread relics across all of them. And it's like, now it's like, no, I have the same number of ideas, but much more densely compact into a map that feels rich with relics. And it's actually, from a mechanics perspective, much easier to deal with that and actually implement it as a player. So I may go back on it again at some point, but that's where I've landed for now. And it's just an interesting example of like, as you're developing and testing a game like this, what kind of sort of tedious, difficult things you have to keep on iterating with and tinkering with and turning knobs and pulling on different levers until something feels right. And I think I've finally found it. It's about relic density rather than spreading everything out far and wide. In a different game with a different context and a different player experience, maybe you'd come to the opposite conclusion. But in Canticle, this is what's working.